Today, I have the beautiful Dawn DelVecchio on the Awaken Feminine podcast. She's joining me all the way from New Mexico in the USA. Welcome to the show, Dawn.
Thank you, Kaki. It's really good to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time now.
Yeah, we met a few months ago, and I'm like, oh, when I keep checking my calendar. I'm like, when am I? I'm like, and then I saw your name pop up this week. I'm like, yes, because I'm excited about everything that you do. So, Dawn, can you just give us a quick introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Well, what I do these days really is I serve as a priestess leader. So I help, how do I want to say this? My overarching intention since I was in college was to help women empower themselves. And that's manifested in many different ways, from warrior energy of the martial arts to academia, and really now into the sacred feminine leadership. So the sacred arts of the priestess, the spiritual leader who's deeply attuned to her feminine energies, but also carries the strength of the inner masculine in her leadership in the world. And I do that through my mentorship programs, through different courses and trainings, different retreats, that sort of thing. So it's a mixed bag of online mentorship and training and ceremonies and in-person retreats and one-on-one work.
That sounds like so yummy.
Mm.
Which brings me to ask you this question, and I think you can like talk to it all day, really, with the work that you do. But just before we dive into our full conversation, what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
Yeah. I just like to go in so that inward, so it's not coming from my mind, but more from the heart and the belly. So awakened to me is someone who has self-awareness first and is attuning to her own, and it could be a man too, in his own inner guidance, inner truth, through a connection with the divine, a connection to our higher source. So an awakened feminine is a woman who's deeply connected with the wisdom of her own higher self, as well as her body, and attuned to the rhythms and cycles of her life.
That's a beautiful definition. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, Dawn, I would really love to dive into your journey. How does one become a priestess?
Yeah,
Can you?
good question.
I think it's probably a long answer, but if you can, show us how it all unfolded for you, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So my journey began a long time ago. So just to briefly answer your question now, there are many sisters who are have done a lot of inner work on themselves and a lot of skill development in order to mentor other women to become priestesses. But my journey was different than that. So my journey began in 1984 when I had a home birth. And the midwives who supported me in birthing my son, they started a home birth support group. And in that group, I met other women who were having home births. And there was one woman who said, "Hey, is anyone interested in starting a mother's support group?" And so I said yes, because I was a very young mom. I was a single mom and I needed support. I got a lot of practical support from my family, but I needed the support that were more aligned with the values that I wanted to raise a child with. So we start, and my joke, and the people who've listened to this are probably tired of hearing it, who know me. My joke about my initiation into priestesshood was that we started off as a group of 6 women who thought we were going to be talking about things like breastfeeding and diaper rash and, playtime and these things that new moms talk about. And we ended up being a circle of priestesses, or a coven of witches, we would say back then. The language was different back then, dancing naked under the moon. So what happened was we would meet every other week, and we would sit in a circle, pass a talking stick. And that was like just a natural thing. I don't know if one of us knew how to do that or what. And we started developing principles of listening and speaking and learning from books and things. And then one sister brought in a deck of Mother Peace Tarot. The Mother Peace Tarot is the round tarot deck, and the book accompanying it, not the little booklet that comes with every tarot deck, but the book is quite a well-researched study of goddess culture around the world pre-patriarchy. And then some of us started to go into women's studies, and some of us started learning Wicca ceremonies. So it became this sort of natural organic evolution, such that in about 2 years, so about 1986, we decided to initiate ourselves into a circle of priestesses, and we called ourselves MotherSpirit. And that's how it began for me. Now, over time, we went our separate ways. One of the sisters has since passed. We're all over the country now. And my journey continued on a spiritual path. As I said, I was in the warrior space for a while. I think I said that as a martial artist. I've been a journalist, traveled, etc. But there was always that thread, whether it was the tarot cards, eventually astrology, sitting with sisters in deep conversation, personal spiritual exploration. So there's been many, many wending its way. This journey has been long since then. And so now the work I do is much more, what's the word, full than what we started with as early young priestesses connecting with the goddess and the divine feminine.
Wow, I just love your story. I've got two young girls myself, and it's funny because I don't think many people would find a mother's group, as you originally intended it to start, and talk about something completely not about diapers and all those things. So I'm really interested. So did you even talk about diapers?
A little bit, we did. Yeah, it's a great question. That's a great question. It started that way, but it not for very long, because I think each of us were much deeper than that. There were none of the six of us. I mean, think about it. We all had home births. We were all living in a state where home birth was not legal or illegal. It was illegal because nobody did it. So already we were on the edge. We were at the leading edge of a different kind of consciousness. We were many of us put our kids in a cooperative daycare where each parent had to do a 4-hour turn a week, and the husband couldn't pan it off on the wife. It's like, no, everyone had to do it. So we were already living at a different edge. One of the women had studied yoga in India. Now think about this, 84. There were no yoga studios. Yoga wasn't a thing, at least not in the United States. So the seeds were already planted. So the superficial conversation just didn't last that long. We weren't not that there's anything wrong with speaking about diaper rash and breastfeeding and all. That's helpful. And it was helpful, especially for a young mom like me, because besides my own mother, I was learning how to be a mother, and learning to be a conscious mother as best I could, given how young I was. And so that was valuable, but it wasn't enough to sustain the group. It got juicy within the first 6 months, I think the tarot cards came in at 6 months, and then that was like all bets were off. The goddess was there and calling us to awaken.
I love that, because I was going to ask you, I'm like, oh, what made you decide to have a home birth? Because it wasn't really a thing back then.
Right. Yeah.
So it was, so you already had, that's so cool. I just love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a rebel from the time I was really young, and I have not really ever trusted. Now, this is just personal Dawn stuff. Although I would say that to some degree that was true with all of us. I was never into big mainstream stuff, whether it was Western medicine or whatever. So I got very interested, even when I was pregnant, in nutrition. One of my midwives, her sister is a very famous herbalist and famous author. So we started studying herbalism. So I was already, I wasn't in the mainstream, like you go to the hospital, you get the epidural, and it didn't cross my mind to seriously consider that if I had a different option.
I love that. I really do. You were already like there, that priestess was already within you before you even knew.
Yeah, and a funny story with that, because I was quite young. I was 18. So when I finally and I was determined. So and the other thing is I was in California. So I met women who had had home births, and that was very influential, obviously. But then I moved back to Connecticut, and I was determined to have a home birth. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but it was one of those things. I've had a number of these things in my life where I just knew. I just knew, absolutely no question about it, it's going to happen. My parents thought I was nuts, even though my Italian father was born at home and all his siblings were too. They believed in the Western, the allopathic medicine. So I did a bunch of research, found the midwives. They were very concerned. They told me later. They had already sort of scrummed and said, I don't think we should take an 18-year-old. That could be really a liability issue for us. And I came in and I had already read several books on birthing, home birth, health. And I interviewed them. I asked them all these questions and stuff. I was a little naive, didn't even realize how young I was, but that was the deciding factor for them. They saw that I actually had the maturity to birth a child in a more conscious, intentional way. And I wasn't just going to be some flailing, dippy teenager. So, yeah. So it's a funny story. And I didn't know that until after, maybe a few months after my son was born. They told me that, when we first met you, we were like, no, we don't think so. And then when we actually had the conversation, we realized that you were pretty grounded.
Wow. I'm just like so mind blown with how you went about things that you just knew. Like as an 18-year-old, if you think about 18-year-olds now, and even thinking about when I was 18, like I would not be absolutely sure, because most of us are so unsure about what we want, who we are, and all those things. So, whew, I just like, wow. And to know that, I think it's inspiring to know that, you can have all the answers when you're young. It's just being taught to actually listen to yourself, which we don't get to learn.
Right. And to be quite honest, I was all of those kind of teenage things too. And I had been a hippie touring around on Grateful Dead land, with my boyfriend, the father of my son. So it wasn't like I had my act all together. I got pregnant on Grateful Dead tour. So, but there've been numerous times, well, not numerous, maybe a handful of times in my life where I had an absolute knowing. And that was probably the first one, at least in my adult consciousness, where the stubborn Taurus in me or something said, no, I am going to have a home birth no matter what. Yeah. And there was no option for something else. Now, that doesn't mean I was like that in my whole life. There were lots of other things I needed to learn, and lots of naivete, and, sort of caught up in my own stuff as teenagers, especially American teenagers seem to be. So I was all that too. But this was one of those things when it dropped in so strong, like I will have a home birth.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah. I'll be like, oh, if you didn't have all the teenage stuff as well. But yeah. I think it's just when you know, I think, and it's to trust that when you do know, you know, no matter how old you are. Like even as young, like my girls, sometimes they're like, no, like they are that absolute sureness in them. It's cultivating that, I think. Yeah. So enough about talking about motherhood and all this stuff. But I was just so interested in how it all came about. So you mentioned that you've done, like, lots of different things in your life, like martial artist, journalist, and before we hit record, you were telling me that you were a copywriter. What led you and made you decide that I'm actually going to, do this sacred work where I, help, do what you're doing, like being that priestess, like actually just focusing on that and serving the, sacred feminine?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like Divine Mother called me back to the Sacred Feminine Temple after many years of meandering elsewhere. And so I had the opportunity just to kind of backtrack after the martial arts years. So 12 years really studying the arts of war and being a martial arts teacher and ring fighter and of the martial art Muay Thai. So Muay Thai kickboxing. Hence my connection with Thailand. But I had like an epiphany shift there. And I really wanted to be a writer. So then I ended up moving to Thailand, quitting Muay Thai and becoming a professional writer. And I did that for many years. That eventually landed me a job with Mind Valley. I don't know if you know Mind Valley.
Yes.
Yeah. So I worked with that company when they were early on. So 2010, 2011, I worked with them.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So now that is a job, or I don't know if it still is, but I think it still is. That's the gift that keeps giving. You could just say you worked as a writer in Mind Valley and get some pretty awesome gigs, which that's what I did was I leveraged that into becoming a copywriter and got some business coaching and consulting to develop a business. And because I had that businessy, marketing, I mean, Vishen is a genius marketer, and what the company does is, they're leading edge with that stuff. So my coach has really sent me in the direction down the road of being a business and marketing coach. And you know what? I didn't love it. I didn't even like it that much. It was stressful, but I don't know if you've ever gone through really high ticket business coaching, but like when you've got really expensive bill to pay for that every month, it's a fire under your backside to get clients. So I suffered with that for a while. And then, so here's the answer to your question, the major pivotal moment. I got invited to speak at the Awakened Woman Conference in Bali in 2016. And I was going to talk about, women, spiritual business owners, basically, running a spiritual business. And I met all these women who were priestesses. And I was like, wait a minute, you can do like a business as a priestess? You can like do that? You can lead retreats as a bit. It never even occurred to me. And there was a level of suffering that I was experiencing because I was deeply invested financially in these business coaching and do this one track I was on. Right. And I was like, wow, that's what I want. I want to be in the sacred feminine space. I don't want to keep going to business conferences with nice businessy suits and stuff like that. It was never me anyway. So that began just like a big ship, you can't just pivot it. I had to slow down the ship and then start to make the turn. And so that was the moment. And then of course, once you make the decision, as I'm sure you know, when you align with what your soul intended, you think magic and miracles come to support. So that's what happened. And there's too many of those to tell you about, but I really feel like it was like Divine Mother placed me in this place to see and experience a whole new way of showing up as a feminine leader. That was really what I had come to do. And so then I just started having gatherings at my house. I was living in Sedona at the time. So women's circles and all the things I had done before, tarot and astrology and all the things I love to do. I started doing that again until in 2019, I got the guidance to do a summit called Return of the Priestess. And I scheduled that to coincide with my tech VA's schedule. And it ended up coinciding with rolling out when the whole planet was locked down in 2020. Mm-hmm. And so that unfolded as the world locked down, and this global summit event with 30 speakers from 6 continents went out to the world. Thousands of women watched it, and I suddenly had a big list, and I was speaking with women from all over the world and other priestesses, and taking my initiation program to the totally next level, from basically initiating friends and sister friends in a small thing to a whole, women all over the world. And yeah, so that was the journey. It was the Awakened Woman Conference and then the Return of the Priestess Summit right when the world was locked down.
Wow. 2020 was like a gift, like for awakening people.
Yes.
Yeah, so many shifts for the world, in bad ways, but many good ways. So yeah, wow. It's so interesting that you were in that business coaching because, like, knowing you, Dawn, now, I would like, oh, okay. But it makes sense with what you were doing before. So, because you went to the Awakened Women Summit thinking, you're going to be talking about, spiritual business. So, with your business in the business and marketing business that you had, were you actually incorporating your spiritual things in there, or were you purely more business focused?
Well, yeah, good question. I was attracting more spiritual women, so I could always talk about whether it was Reiki or astrology or tarot, and I started bringing astrology in and doing my clients' charts. But that was the main thing. But then being able to understand their businesses from a more spiritual perspective. But I wasn't doing ceremony. I wasn't really talking about the goddess or the divine feminine, or guiding us through meditations to connect with our inner priestess, inner feminine. None of that stuff. So there was. But I was never straight up. I've never been a mainstream person, as is clear from my story from the beginning. I've never been. So I couldn't fully fit into, the tidy business networking stuff. I tried a little bit, but it landed flat for me. I didn't fit. I don't blend.
Yeah, I totally get it. It's, yeah. I think I was always very closet spiritual. So for me, there's always this feeling of not fitting in, but I never knew until I awakened. Then I went, oh, okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you weren't meant to fit in. That's the thing. And many of us who grew up I was born in 65. So I was going to school in 70s and then high school in the early 80s. And, a lot of us who didn't fit in, we didn't have any other models. And many teenagers feel like they don't fit in. That's true. But back then, we were seen as the black sheep, the rebels, the ones who went out to hide in the dugouts to smoke dope rather than do our schoolwork. Although I was like A and B student. It wasn't like I completely dropped that ball and failed, but we were seen as the ones who wouldn't succeed. And what many of us have come to realize now is that those of us who never fit in, we weren't supposed to fit in. We weren't supposed to blend, and everybody's soul contract is different. So there's no judgment on what anyone's journey is, but it's been a real comfort to find the other black sheeps and recognize that, by me not fully buying into the system, I didn't get as indoctrinated as people who just stayed in it for so long. Yeah. And there's just more unwinding that you have to do. And again, it's nothing, your journey's yours, mine's mine, but to see and really understand that now. And I even see it with my son, who tried one semester of college. He was like, nah. And now I see, he builds houses. He's brilliant at what he does. He loves what he does. He didn't need to do that. And it would have just sent him in a direction that wasn't aligned with his soul. And so same, with those of us who we kind of checked out at some of the stronger levels of conformity that was being insisted upon. And we're just like, nah, I'd rather play hooky or just come in minimum amount as I need to get the minimum grades to get the heck out of here.
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder for anyone in our audience who's listening or watching us right now. It's so important that just because you don't fit into the mold that everyone else is, making themselves fit into, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to find your right people.
Totally. And in fact, I would say anything that's mold-like with the masses is what we definitely want to get away from now, because this experiment of trying to get one size to fit all, and goddess only knows how long that's been going on, and whatever iteration over history's time. it doesn't work. That's not how we're designed. When we start really awakening and attuning to our higher self, our divine God, goddess force, we recognize we are all unique. And while we have many commonalities, we don't need to get caught up in everyone being the same or everyone following the same value system, as long as we don't hurt each other, right? Literally violate each other's freedom. Yeah. As long as we honor each other's freedom and right to be, that model of one size fits all is it's a spiritually immature model. And again, not to try and put other people down. It's a consciousness. Yeah. It's not about individual people. It's a consciousness.
Yeah. And like what you said, everyone's on their journey and different parts of their journey. So some people will awaken later and go, oh shit, like what was I thinking back then? And some will awaken like really early on, and some might never awaken, and it's all, okay. And I think, yeah, just that message that you brought, like we are all unique. And I know people talk about oneness. Oneness doesn't mean that we're all the same. It just means that, we all come from that one source, but we are all unique in our separate ways and our different thinking, that's the thing. Like we all think differently. So how can one size fits all?
Yeah. Yeah. We're all different expressions of the divine having an experience of itself. And there's an analogy I love to share. It comes from the Course in Miracles teachings, which I'm a student of the Course in Miracles, which has been my highest frequency teaching and blessing in this life that I have received. And so what I like to say is there's one road, and we are either walking away from the divine, or that which we would call God, our ultimate creator, or walking back toward it. So when we come into this experience of the earth realm, we come into the experience of separation, and our physical bodies are demonstrations of that. So we can say, at the highest level of being, we are all one, but we have chosen to come into separation to explore what that feels like and to chase the things that excite us, including the idols that we often come to realize do not satisfy. So, if we think of the chakras, low-level idols, chasing sex all the time, or pleasures of the body, or maybe it becomes chasing, egoic constructs of like greatness. I'm an empire builder. I'm a famous person. I'm this, that, and the other. And then over the course of lifetimes and incarnation, we exhaust those desires. We start to realize that none of them ultimately give us the peace and satisfaction and joy that we want. And that's when we turn around and start walking back toward our loving creator. And that's when we start to awaken, when we start to go, oh yeah, I thought that would bring me happiness, but it didn't. And so, it's not to, we all are here to experience what we came to experience. And so it's not bad to chase your idols. When we exhaust them, then we no longer need to keep our energies driving us in directions that don't bring us happiness. So wherever we are at the soul level, it's a soul maturation process over multiple incarnations, at least from the lens that I look through the Course in Miracles and through evolutionary astrology. So there's no need to judge anyone else where they're at in their life, what their belief systems are, all of that. As long as we're not violating the freedoms of others, we're free to chase our idols, to learn for ourselves. It's just like a little kid. You can say, whatever, if you jump in the mud puddle before you go to school, you're going to be cold and wet all day. Sometimes they just have to learn that. And we do that at a soul level as well.
Yeah, that is so true. It's like, don't do that. And then they do it. But it's a lesson. It's a lesson for them to learn that. So, yeah, thank you for that wisdom that you just imparted on us. Dawn, this has popped in a few times for me to ask you, because I know you channel. So when did that start coming in?
Yeah, that great question. Boy, I would say it's about 2 years ago. And I credit this to the Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles is a slow mind training process that helps you clear away the detritus of the ego that keeps us in low frequency, egoic constructs of fear, self-identity stuff that does not serve a higher order of love and the remembrance of love's presence within our consciousness. So as we clear that, we become more of an open channel for possibility. So it was about 2 years ago, I started to channel verbally. However, I have to say that, I've been a writer all my life. I've got so many journals. Just ask my husband about how many times he schlepped boxes of journals every time we've moved. I've been channeling a long, long time, handwritten channeling, where I'm just dialogue. I'll ask a question and guidance comes through. And I never really took it that seriously, like, ooh, I'm a writer, channeler. I really didn't trust it until about 3 years into the course, and having done a lot of forgiveness work, a lot of clearing up, then I started to be able to drop in to really open my mouth, like surrender and trust and get out of the way and open my mouth, and stuff would come through.
Wow. Do you channel anyone or any being in particular, or?
Different beings come through at different times. Some of the strongest ones are Isis, the goddess Isis, who has been the overlighting divine feminine guide for the Return of the Priestess series, and the overall, I would say, the overarching mission for me to call the women back to the temple within, like not so much going to a physical temple anymore. Yeah. Although who knows, maybe that'll happen too. So Isis, certainly, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary. I have channeled Jesus, but usually only in my private community. It's a powerful energy, and I don't always feel comfortable. And lately, since my journey to Southeast Asia this past winter, which was the first time since the COVID stuff, the dragon mothers and the Nagas, so the serpent beings, who are guardians of the earth. So now there's a sort of shift or an addition to the mission unfolding for me, my particular soul assignment, which relates to guardianship of the earth, grid work, and with that, working with these interdimensional beings who are the ancient guardians of the earth. So they've come through a few times very strongly as well. Sekhmet as well has come through. A lot of the divine feminine, what we think of as the different rays or different aspects of the divine feminine. And then there's also my overall guides and teachers, Ananda. So that's a collective, and sometimes I channel them too, usually with relation to course principles or non-dual principles.
Wow, that's so awesome. And I'm not surprised you channel all the goddesses. So,
yeah.
And all the, ascended masters. So, wow, that is so cool. Can you share with us, Dawn, a bit more about, your work with the sacred feminine? Like what is it that you, bring to the women that, come and join you in that sacred space?
Yes, it's really bringing together a deep honoring of the feminine. So how is that piece done? That piece is done through talking and listening, through sharing circles, through passing the talking stick. Or I purchased through Etsy a clay yoni. And so we pass the talking yoni. Sometimes we do a crystal or other things as well. So that's one piece. Really giving space for women to feel safe, to express whatever's going on for them, and to be heard and witnessed. The power of that cannot be understated. And that has its roots in the early Mother Spirit, my first priestess circle. So that's that one piece. The next piece is the ceremonial aspect, which I haven't talked really much about yet, but ceremonial practices, personal daily practices, as well as facilitating ceremony. So I'm a ceremonial priestess. I have a lot of skills and experience in facilitating ceremonial experiences, sacred experiences, co-created together, or sometimes I create them and just facilitate them, but also co-creating in groups so that other women learn how to step into leadership roles in a ceremonial way, so that we're taking intention and somatic enactment and celebration and music and dance and creating I'm seeing like a flower or a bouquet almost of an experience that goes deep into all levels of being, the body, the mind, the spirit, and speaks to the universe through the song of ceremonial expression. So that's another piece that comes in certainly in my retreats and my workshops. And then the other piece really is the non-dual principles of the Course in Miracles. This is to me, some of the highest frequency teachings on the planet, specifically designed for the Western mind. So they are the same teachings of the Eastern masters, but they're brought forward through a channel transmission from the one we knew as Jesus, who learned from the Eastern masters, for the mind who's been trained in a Western tradition through the Judeo-Christian, etc., and bringing that into the feminine space, bringing the understanding of the non-dual nature of who we really are as divine beings who have had a dream of separation from our Creator. And that forgiveness is the key to liberation, forgiving ourselves. Or one quote from the Course in Miracles, forgiving the world for the errors we have made. Because when we really deeply recognize that everything we are experiencing in our lives is an outprojection of what's inside of us, individually and collectively, then it becomes a self-forgiveness practice, really. And then we let everybody else off the hook. So when you have a quote unquote enemy who comes into your life and you say, oh, why is this happening in my life? And you go in rather than being a victim and saying, I'm victimized by this evil, bad person or this evil, bad government or this evil, bad whatever, fill in the blank, and say, how am I a frequency match to that? Not to blame. This is not about blaming victim. This is about recognizing that I am fully responsible, and in my responsibility, I become liberated from being caught in the lower frequencies of 3D. So those teachings, it's hard to summarize it in one fell swoop. But, those women who are I have a community, a private paid community, and in my retreats, and those people who come to a lot of my free events and stuff, I do a lot of free stuff online and videos. They start to really grasp this, that the real liberation comes when we come into our full sovereignty, when we sit on our sovereign throne as the queens of our life and say, yep, I created that. I don't know how. It's not about me being a victim, but I'm going to do the healing, loving, compassionate thing and discover how why that's manifesting in my life, so I can forgive myself, let that person off the hook, and it doesn't have to keep showing up in my life.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And, what Dawn just shared with us is, just personally, like just in the most recent things that have happened for me, as soon as you forgive yourself, like the thing that was bothering you, it doesn't bother you anymore.
It doesn't bother you anymore. Exactly. Yeah. So I had an experience. I used to have the experience of being bullied by men. So the pattern was set with my father, really ground in with my first husband. And then when I left my first husband and moved to Southeast Asia, I didn't know how to resolve this. I didn't have the tools of the Course in Miracles. I wasn't spiritually mature enough anyway. But I was like, right, all I do is attract bully men, so I'm not going to have any relationship, which was easy to do as a white woman in Bangkok, Thailand, let me tell you, because a lot of the men there are looking for Thai women. So it was frustrating, but it was also what I knew I needed. So what happens? I find an employer who steps right into those shoes. Of course, we're not lovers, we're not family, but it didn't matter. The pattern was the same. And so consciously I knew I've got this pattern. I'm the common denominator, but I just didn't know how to heal it and clear it. I couldn't see what it was. Now, there were things that helped along the way, like Women Who Run with the Wolves. I don't know if you ever read that book, but that gave me some powerful insights about how I was showing up as a victim to the masculine. So that helped it. But it was the Course in Miracles and the deep deep clarification of the mind slowly over time that kicked me up to a level of liberation from some of those annoying patterns that we all have. And thank you for letting me speak. There's another piece I want to add in here, which contextualizes where we're at right now on the planet. We are in a time of a rapid acceleration of frequencies that's forcing consciousness acceleration or deceleration, or, sort of spiraling downward, madness, if you will. There's a pressure on our consciousness through the amount of light coming in from the sun, the Earth's frequency, the craziness happening on the planet for us to awaken and evolve. And so we no longer, I feel, if we want to really live happy lives, we don't have the luxury of staying unconscious about our unhealthy patterns. And furthermore, those souls who are awakening, we literally came here because we are at the end of a spiritual season. We're like with our team before we birthed into this life, right? Oh, I got to clean up that energy. Yeah. I want to clean up that energy because I want to graduate. And I'm, oh yeah, there's this whole pattern here. Definitely want to work on that. So some of us are getting hit over and over and over again with stuff until we clean it up. So we don't have to be victims of this. We can say, right, my soul chose some big assignments here because I know it's almost time to graduate and I want to graduate. So I hope that makes sense. Sorry for rambling on, but I feel like there's so many, it's so important to bring that point across at this time.
Yeah. And I totally get what you're talking about. And I know the people that are listening to this will as well. So thank you for sharing that. It is, it is just, you either raise your vibration and your frequency, or like you say, you go down. So, that the choice is yours, whether you choose to, just go, oh, I want to, like you say, I want to graduate, or not graduate.
Yeah. And I really feel like some of the, the victimizing consciousness right now, it's a losing proposition primarily for those who want to stay stuck in it, because those of us who keep doing our inner work, we pop up and out of the 3D matrix and we start living extraordinary lives that we never thought that we would have before. And this is not about taking away from another. This is literally about becoming the sovereign in our lives and being able to access our multidimensional capacity to manifest.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we can talk about this all day, but I want to ask you, you talked about, what it looks like to, be in the sacred space with you. And I know you have got something that you're creating right now, a signature program. Do you want to talk a bit more about that and what it looks like and how people can, be part of it?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so my MotherSpirit 13 Moon Priestess Mentorship Program is my what I consider my flagship program. This is a fairly small group program. So if I get more than 10 women, I do 2 different groups, so that I'm sure we have enough time for the things I described earlier: sharing time, inner work time, ceremonial time, leadership time. So this is it's an online program. There's a different theme each month, and there's 2 calls per month. So that this will be the 5th year's iteration of MotherSpirit. And at the end of the 13 moons, there's a final project, and then you graduate and you become a MotherSpirit priestess. So women who whether you're a priestess in another lineage or not, it's fine. Women who want to be in a safe, sacred women's circle where they build bonds for life with other sisters, and want to go deep into an inner exploration of what needs to be healed, cleared, transformed, and elevated in me in that space, and cultivate ceremonial and priestess leadership skills in whatever ways. Different women are different. Some are artists, some are healers. That part doesn't matter. It's about being a leadership in our own lives, leadership in our families, and perhaps leadership at a bigger level as well. So it's really for women who are ready to stand as priestess, to be a bearer of light and love and compassion in these times, and to also be a sovereign in her own energy. This is a beautiful container to journey into those deeper realms and those elevated realms of feminine strength and sacred feminine leadership.
Thank you for sharing that work. Your work is so necessary right now. It's beautiful. So if anyone listening right now feels called to be part of Dawn's world, and then I'll have the links in the show notes when this episode comes out. So thank you for sharing that, Dawn. I'm just looking at the time, so I wanted to ask you one last question before we wrap up, and it's what would you like our audience to take home with them from our conversation today?
I'm getting chills now. So Divine Mother is here. You are the light you wish to see in this world. You are a loved, beloved, and loving being. And whatever it is you have walked through, whatever challenges, whatever difficulties, whatever actions you've chosen, thoughts you've had which you do not feel good about, let them go. Judge not yourself anymore, for your light is so needed at this time. You are loved without condition. And any mistakes, any errors you have made are forgotten when you pass from this realm. And so come back into the embodiment, into the ownership of the love and the light you truly are. For now is the time when your love and your light is needed. Forgive yourself, love yourself, and open to receive the love of your God, Goddess, Creator. For we are here for you and we love you dearly.
Thank you. I received all of that. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful message. Oh, such a beautiful way to wrap up our conversation. Dawn, thank you so much for this time together. If people want to, work with you, find out more about you, where are the best places to go?
Yeah, well, certainly initially when this first comes out, the link that you share, they can also just go to my website, DelVecchio.com. And you can also, if you want to watch some of if you're like someone who likes to listen to YouTube videos while you're cooking or cleaning or whatever, I like to do that. You can look my name up on YouTube, and there might be I don't think there's other Dawn DelVecchios in the world, but I don't know that any of us have a YouTube channel. But anyway, you can see and hear what I sound like. So you'll find me there as well.
I'll have all your links in the show notes so people can reach out to you, whether it's just, your YouTube channel or exploring your program. I'll have all those in the show notes. Thank you once again, Dawn. Thank you.